Hi folks, welcome to this video, which is an economic explainer about energy markets. Energy markets have been making headline news for the past few months, and this is a great opportunity to explore some of the issues surrounding that. So we're going to look at gas and electricity markets, the factors that have affected them, the demand and supply. We're also going to look at market pricing and also how that leads into or links to the energy price cap. If you're interested to find out about this, to see whether the interventions that are being suggested over the coming days by the new Prime Minister are going to be effective, then stick around. So looking at the market for gas first, what we can see here is we have relatively high levels of demand, and although we could say that levels of supply are also high in the beginning, but there's some factors that have influenced or affected the market over the last year or so. On the demand side, these factors are the recovery from COVID. There's been a return to increased levels of manufacturing, and what that means is that more natural gas is being required for energy and is increasing demand. There's also been a decline in winds around Europe, and although that might seem unrelated, wind power is used as a way to generate electricity, the same as gas is. So effectively what's happened here is the demand for gas has stepped up to replace less wind power being available. So effectively what we have here is an increase in demand from D1 to D2. Now on the supply side, we've also had issues. There's been the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Because of sanctions on Russia, one of the things that they've done in return is to restrict the supply of gas into Europe. There's been a reduction in supply, so our supply curve here is shifting upwards and inwards from S1 up to S2. Excuse the slightly wonky line. We now have a new equilibrium point. We're working at D2, S2, and what that means here, that shows us that we have a much higher price level in the free market. This is being exacerbated in the UK. Although we only take 4% approximately of our natural gas supply from Russia, we are also in competition with the rest of Europe for that, but also the rest of Europe is switching their demands for gas to the other sources that we use. So even though we're not very dependent on Russian gas, it is pushing up the price that we're having to pay. Although the UK does produce quite a lot of natural gas itself, it tends to either use that straight away or sell it off into Europe. A few years ago, the UK's natural gas storage was scaled back drastically. And what that means is that our supply curve has become even more inelastic. We're at the mercy of market forces and prices now. We produce the gas, we sell it as we can, but other countries are storing it for us, and then we're having to buy it back from them as and when we need it, which links into what we're going to look at with electricity markets and marginal pricing. Now the electricity market is slightly more complicated because electricity can come from many different forms of energy. As we can see here, it can come from the burning of gas, it can come from wind generated power, it can come from solar power, nuclear, coal, other sources, hydroelectric and so on. And all of those will have different prices in the market. Now, when you're buying electricity, it is coming from all of these sources. Your provider is sending it through to you with what they've bought on the wholesale market, which will be from a mixture of these. And so the price that they're buying on the market is just for electricity, for energy, charged per megawatt hour. So your retailer is paying the wholesale market price and will then pass that on to you. And this is something that the Ofgem price cap help to control and regulate, and we'll discuss that in a moment. The wholesale price though is generally set as a marginal price. Now, because of the way that these sources of electricity are generated, wind, solar, nuclear, they're quite inelastic. It's hard to ramp up production quickly and easily. So the marginal prices usually come from the extra that firms, wholesalers have bought, which will come from the burning of natural gas, which is more flexible. So the market has worked fine until what has happened recently over the last year or so in the natural gas market occurred, and that's the shooting up of prices. And what we can see here is that, well, in the UK, natural gas accounts for maybe 40% of our electricity. However, the price of that wholesale gas sets the marginal price, which is really the wholesale price, and then the price that is passed on to us as consumers. There is a way around this, and this would be to get the market or encourage the market to decouple the different prices of electricity there is. And this is something that the European Union is exploring at the moment. So making sure that wind, solar, nuclear are paying these approximate prices, and gas, while it may still be a higher price, we're only paying or the EU will only be paying the extra on that gas they're consuming, helping to lower those electricity bills overall. There's been quite a lot of talk recently about the energy price cap and that how it's not really functioning because it's not keeping prices low. The energy price cap, when it was introduced in 2018, was set to protect consumers from rising prices or from energy firms charging too much. Effectively, what Ofgem said is that the firms could charge as an upper limit on energy they were providing was the market price plus 1.9%. Effectively, this put a price cap or a maximum price on energy. The free market price was at the time below this. We could say, for example, it was at P1, because if you were shopping around for your energy in a competitive market, then you could take a price lower than the price cap. The reason the price cap was there is because a lot of energy deals and other household bills are tied into contracts where there's maybe an initial discount, and then at the end of a year or 2 years you go on to a standard tariff. Now, some people like myself, at the end of their tariff, they will shop around for what the best deal out there is. But not everyone is able to do that. Not everyone is aware. Things can come up in their lives. They're not tech savvy enough to go out there. So the Ofgem price cap was a way of saying really to energy firms, look, if people come off of your discounted tariff at the end of the period, you can't raise prices and make supernormal profits on them. So it was to protect those consumers. Effectively, what's happened though is that over the last 18 months or so, as we saw, the cost of supply of energy has increased. This has been raising supply, as an example, from S1 up to S2. Normally that would raise the free market price up to P2. But because the energy price cap has been in position, what that's meant, firms can't charge above this price. At this price here, we can see that demand in the market is there, but the amount of firms that firms are willing to supply is here. And what we've got is excess demand. That might be because firms in this situation, if they continue to supply, they wouldn't be able to cover their costs. They could go into liquidation, they could become bankrupt. And actually that did happen to a few firms. Their customers were passed on to other providers, and the funds to compensate were added onto standing charges on bills. So effectively, to stop that excess demand, to stop suppliers leaving the market, Ofgem has had to keep raising that price cap in order to keep the supply of energy in the market. So here the issue is not necessarily with the retailers who we get our bill from, whether that's Bulb or Octopus or Outfox the Market, and there's many of small firms like that. They are exposed to the wholesale price rises. They are just passing those on to us as consumers. The real issue, I believe, lies back with the price of gas being so much more than the price of other renewables, yet the price of gas still setting that wholesale market cost. So over the next few days, we've got a new Prime Minister. She's going to be announcing loads of policies that is supposed to be helping this. So hopefully this information here will allow you to analyse those, to evaluate those and say, look, does this really tackle the cause of the problem in our energy markets? Are there other things that we could look at? Do we need to increase renewables, take away our dependence on European natural gas? So hopefully this has given you the information you need to understand that market a little bit better. I hope this has explained some things to you. If you've enjoyed it or you found it useful, please hit the subscribe button, set notifications so you know when there's more like this coming up, and thank you. See you around.